Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I'm going to do a little cozy early December book haul for everybody because I have a nice little stack of books that I have purchased and been sent over the last few weeks, and I am excited to show you guys what I got. So the first books that I want to show you are the books that I was sent in the last few weeks, and that starts off with Z.S. Diamante's books Stone Sky and Stone Sky Preludes collections. As you can see, the Preludes collection is a set of, I think, short stories set in the same world as Stone Sky. Now, as you can see from the beautiful cover of this book, we have griffins. So the author reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in reading this, and to be perfectly honest with you, griffins are something that I don't see in fantasy often enough, and I've been hearing some really good things about this from a lot of other people, so he was kind of on my radar already. And I think just based on what I've read of this and what I've heard, this is going to give me some very strong, fun, fast, classic fantasy vibes with some griffins involved, and I am very much here for that. The other thing that I want to say, and I feel really bad because I unpackaged it already, but the packaging, these indie authors are killing the packaging. It is so much fun to get these boxes, and he sent me a little note that had a seal, a wax seal on it with the books, and it was packaged really beautifully. So huge thank you to the author for graciously sending me a copy of these books. Now the next stack of books I received from a very good friend of mine, and that is Dr. John Morrow, and I read The Last War by Mike Shackle with him this year, and we had a blast talking about it, and he and I and another friend of mine, Kay from Kay's Hidden Shelf, are planning on doing another buddy read starting in January. And in January, we are going to be dipping into the Queen of Grimdark, Anna Smith Sparks series, starting with The Court of Broken Knives. And I'm not actually sure which one of these is the second, but it's The Court of Broken Knives, The House of Sacrifice, and The Tower of Living and Dying. And I cannot remember which of these two is second and third in this trilogy. But I've heard this is really, 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 really good and really, 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 really dark. So I have no idea what to expect. I have never read anything by Anna Smith Spark before, but as you can see, this from a page count standpoint is a very manageable looking trilogy, and I am really excited to have another trilogy to buddy read, not only with Dr. John Morrow, but adding Kay as well. I think it is going to be a blast, and I hope we have a really fun time with it. The other book that he sent me very graciously was another Anna Smith Spark book called A Woman of the Sword, and this one came out, I think, here in 2023. I'll have to look and double check. Yes, it did come out in 2023, and this one is basically the story of an epic fantasy and a kind of military fantasy vibe, from what I can tell, told through the eyes of an ordinary woman who is a mother. And that is something I can't wait for. I am so excited to read this, and huge thank you again to John for graciously sending me all 4 of these books by Anna Smith Spark so I can get a really good idea of her writing and jump into some of her best known work. Now let's go into the indie fantasy that I ordered from authors. The first one is one that honestly is so incredibly overdue being on my shelves. This is The Seventh Cadence by my very good friend John Wilborn. So Editing Tori is here to let you guys know that sometimes it is helpful to separate people in your videos that you're talking about who have the same letter first name, because my brain was so stuck on talking about John Morrow, my friend who had just sent me the books. And then when I switched over to the indie books, I said John Wilborn. And I feel so bad about that because Jim Wilborn, who is a very good friend of mine, I promise I did not forget what his name is. Jim, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. Just so everyone knows, The Seventh Cadence, which is book 1 of the Continua Chronicles, was written by Jim Wilborn. I don't know who John Wilborn is,
but this video was not intended to highlight him.
This is a chonky indie fantasy, very strong world building, classic vibes. There are dragons, there are kind of coming of age themes to this, and I also picked up the novella that comes after the 7th Cadence, which is Strangers in the Promised Land, which is a novella that takes place, I believe, after 7th Cadence. Hopefully I got that correct. But as you can see, easy little novella, and this is all of the Continua Chronicles that are available so far. Very excited to get to these. I'm hoping to read 7th Cadence here in 2024 because it has been on my TBR for a very long time and I have not had a chance to get to it yet. So I'm looking forward to finally being able to read this and see what I think. Next up, a book from a fellow booktuber, and that is Andrew Watson's Harbinger of Justice. This is like Middle Eastern Egyptian mythology inspired indie fantasy. And I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for that. After chatting with Andrew on a Motley Cruz chat last month, I was even more excited to pick this up. I had ordered the book, I think, or had it in my cart already by the time I talked to Andrew, but once we were talking about his inspiration for this book and his process, I just got more excited to read it, and I can't wait to delve into this. The last set that I purchased from an indie author this month is my friend H.C. Newell's series, The Fallen Light. As you can see, this beautiful, currently 3-book-long series. Look at the beautiful colors and trees on these 3 books. So the first one that I just showed you is Curse of the Fallen, then we have the Forbidden Realms, and then we have the Shadows of Nindira. If we go to the non-indie side of things, we have some books that I'm very excited to talk to you about. So the first one was just me trying to make a book series that I already own look a little bit more cohesive. So I have been meaning to get the hardcover of book 1 of the Hunger Games probably for close to 10 years now. And I found a really cheap version of it on Pango Books, which is an amazing resource. By the way, my link to my Pango store is down in the description, and you can find the whole website from there and do all your book shopping and selling there. It's great. But I finally found a hardcover copy of The Hunger Games, so now I can put it with my hardcovers of Mockingjay and Catching Fire, and they will all match, and that'll be great. I found on Book Outlet this beautiful illustrated edition of The Princess Bride. Now, I was one of those kids who was raised on The Princess Bride film. Absolutely loved it. I was obsessed. Inigo Montoya all day, every day. And I have never read the actual book. So I thought maybe it was time to remedy that, and when I saw this really beautiful illustrated edition, I couldn't say no to that. So as you can see on the inside, there's some really pretty artwork. It's not super illustrated. I was actually a little disappointed that it didn't have as many like full illustrations as I was anticipating that it would have. However, I am very excited to have this on my shelf and to read it and see what the difference between the book and the film is, if any. So anyways, Princess Bride is now on my shelves. I have a little stack of books here, and they're all mass market paperbacks. In 2024, and I am going to have a video that talks a little bit more in depth about this, but I'm working on kind of a project for 2024 that I'm very excited to share with you guys. And I have been talking for a while about my interest in reading some more classic fantasy, especially as written by women, because as a female fantasy author myself, I do enjoy seeing what my predecessors have come out with in the past. So I've been slowly kind of gathering different authors from the anything pre-2000, but especially 1990 and before. And I got a few just to kind of taste test. And the beautiful part about these is they're not crazy long, which I love, because that way I'll be able to taste test a lot of different authors, and I'm not committing to the, massive chunks of today's fantasy. So the first one that I got was Sargasso of Space. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, by Andre Norton. Now here's a weird thing, and I'm going to talk about this more in early 2024. I didn't know that Andre Norton was even a fantasy author. When I was growing up, I read a book by her that was an Egyptian historical fiction called Shadowhawk, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And that's all I knew. So imagine my surprise as an adult where I discover that Andre Norton not only is a fantasy author, but has written literally like a gazillion fantasy books. It's insane. Fantasy sci-fi. She's so well known in the SFF genre that she was referred to as the grand dame of science fiction and fantasy. There's not a whole lot of information about her, and that really bothered me, especially here on YouTube. So I decided that I wanted to dig into her work a little bit. So I picked up Sargasso of Space, which is a tiny little sci-fi. So from what I understand of the back of this book, there is a down on their luck crew who buys a planet, and they kind of buy it sight unseen, or as is, as you might say, and they're not sure what they're getting. And that just sounds like a fun time, and I don't read a ton of science fiction, but I definitely want to dip my toes in a little bit more, and how better to do that than with the grand dame of SFF herself. So this one was one of my first acquisitions of hers, and I love that it's this older edition of the book. It came in this plastic wrap and everything. I can't wait. And I also found out that she did some co-writing with Mercedes Lackey, who is another classic SFF author, and I picked up Elven Bane by the two of them. We have the story of a young woman who is a half-breed in this fantasy world, and there are dragons and elves and all of the classic fantasy things, and this one's a little bit chunkier. But I wanted to read, I am going to get a couple other Andre Norton books, but I wanted to get something science fiction that she had written, and also something that leaned more toward the fantasy side, and those are the two that I have so far. I am definitely going to be picking up some more of her work, but that was a easy way to start. Following in that same vein, I picked up Durini Rising by Katherine Kurtz. Now, one of the things that I'm being a little careful with is that as I go back into classic fantasy, a lot of these books lean more heavily towards the fantasy romance side, which, again, there's nothing wrong with. That's just not personally what I typically enjoy reading. So I grabbed this, and it is a fantasy romance sword and sorcery kind of classic, but it's pretty short, and Katherine Kurtz was one of the names on the list of people that I wanted to check out. So I figured that I would grab it and give it a shot, because I'm not opposed to romance in my fantasy, so we'll see if I enjoy it. Last but not least is a book that's actually been on my TBR for quite a while and just happened to fit in with this theme, and that is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. This is the story of a young woman who has older brothers who dote on her, and they are just wonderful, strong sibling bonds, family, and then a curse is laid on her family and her brothers. And it is definitely heavily based on an Asian folklore or myth that I am aware of with the cranes. And you can see, another book that I have on my shelves that I think is kind of based along that same line is Six Crimson Cranes. Ha! I was right. Elizabeth Lim's Six Crimson Cranes. So I think that these are inspired by a similar mythology folklore tale. So I am excited to read this one as well. And again, it fits in with that classic fantasy lineup that I'm kind of setting up for myself, and I am really, really looking forward to telling you guys more about my project that I'm working on for this. I think it's going to be really fun. I hope you guys enjoy it as well as we head into 2024, so keep an eye out for that. That's all I have for this book haul. I have been kind of keeping myself under wraps a little bit more in terms of my book buying habits, and I have been feeling pretty good about that. I haven't been spending as much money on books because honestly, part of that is just that I have nowhere to put them. And I have, as you can see from behind me in the videos, I have a lot of bookshelves. Well, you can't actually see them all. So I have this one over here, I have this one behind me, and then I actually have two off to my left that are all completely full, and there are still stacks of books. And behind the camera, next to my bed, I have a smaller bookshelf that is just mass market paperbacks, and that is also full. So I'm trying to cut down just from a money saving standpoint, but also a space standpoint. So I've also bought a few ebooks in this last few weeks, and I wanted to share those with you guys because I'm very excited about them. The first one was one that I desperately wish I could get a physical copy of. I'm gonna keep my eyes out. That is Jade Shards by Fonda Lee. I just finished Jade Legacy this week, and I also read The Jade Setter of Jan Loon the day after because I was not okay leaving the world of the Greenbone saga after Jade Legacy. So I instantly purchased the ebook version of Jade Shards because I need more Greenbone saga, and it breaks my heart that this is the last one. Another one that I picked up was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. This one is just kind of a heartwarming, sharing sagely wisdom from an older man to a younger boy, and it is a novella, so it's very short. I have not read anything by Frederick Bachman yet, but he has been recommended to me multiple times. I have A Man Called Uva on my shelf. I've been told to read Anxious People, so I have lots of options, but I kind of liked that I could get a little bit of a taste test with this one. So I also picked up His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik, which is book 1 in the Temeraire series. This one was a complete impulse buy because I was doing a different buddy read with my friends Murphy Napier and Andrews Wizardly Reads, and then they randomly decided within a span of about 2 to 3 hours that they were also going to buddy read this one, and even though I was in the middle of reading Jade Legacy, I should also read it with them. And so I purchased it, and they are now already done with this book, and I haven't started it yet. So I don't know when I'm going to get to this book, but it sounds like it's really good. I really like the premise of it. It's basically dragons set in the Napoleonic War era, which is not anything I would have ever imagined before, but that immediately draws my attention, and I have not read Naomi Novik before, so I'm looking forward to trying her. Next up, I picked up Pathlighter by Rob Lee, and this book is the story of a young man who is fighting to survive amidst a city-state that is falling apart due to a kind of, it's not necessarily a holy war from what I understand, but there is a corrupt government system that is being really oppressive in this world, and it sounds like it's more of a desert setting, which I always really love. And Rob Lee was my launch week, one of my launch week buddies when Bloodstones came out this last week, so I grabbed a copy of his book because it sounds really awesome and I wish him all the best success. I also picked up a couple of audiobooks. I don't think I've ever talked about an audiobook on my book hauls before because I haven't listened to them a whole lot, but I am starting to listen to them a little bit more, and I picked up The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien as read by Andy Serkis because it was on sale this last week, and I've been wanting to read The Hobbit. I don't know if I'm going to immersion read it yet. I haven't quite decided, but I knew that I wanted to have this in my library in case I needed it this next year because Andy Serkis is a genius, and I am so excited to hear him tell the story of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I also picked up a full audio drama of Red Rising, which I am very excited about. Obviously, if you have been here for longer than 2 minutes, you know that Red Rising is a huge favorite of mine, and I would really love to hear an audio drama of it. I hope that it's good. I'm really excited. It's one that I have never imagined what I think the characters might sound like. That's usually not something that I actually do when I'm reading or writing, which I realized recently is kind of strange. I don't actually have any auditory perception of the books that I'm reading or writing. So if someone were to ask me, what do you imagine that your favorite characters might sound like? I don't actually have an answer to that. I know what they look like in my head and just the visual aspect of it, but I don't really have a specific marker for what different characters sound like because I don't hear it when I'm reading. I have actually listened to a couple of audiobooks here in the last couple of months that I've really enjoyed, so you never know. Maybe I'll turn into an audiobook listener yet. That is pretty much everything that I have purchased in the last couple of weeks. I hope that you guys have been having a great week. Let me know down in the comments below what is a book that you purchased or added to your wish list recently. Let me know down in the comments. I hope you're having a great week. I hope you are reading 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video. Hello. Do you want to say hello? Hi. What do you think? It's an overs. You pretty girl. Look how pretty you are. Okay, sit with me. Ow! Oh, those claws were brutal. You guys, I just ate a very, like, it was a mint chocolate. But the mint is so strong. Ugh. Wowza. That was a very weird tasting mint. That was almost like epic amounts of mint toothpaste coming through there. That was not my favorite.